Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is sponsored by Janji. Janji is a local to Boston running apparel company dedicated to exploring, connecting, and giving back through running. Inspired by travel, informed by function, and built for adventure, Janji makes running essentials to equip you wherever you run or roam. The company was founded on the core belief that water is a human right and donates 2% of their sales to supporting clean water organizations around the world. I've known the two co-founders of Janji for over 5 years, and it's been a privilege to see them grow and increase the level at which they've been able to give back to the running community and to the world in general. Welcome back. I have Keira D'Amato on the podcast today. Keira, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
I am thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. So first question before we get too far into it is always a tough one. Who is Keira?
Keira is an ever-evolving person. I figured out last night that I'm actually really into roasted carrots, so that's an exciting new discovery. But I'm a mom of two very energetic kids that are energetically exhausting to be a parent of, but also a lot of fun. I'm a wife to Anthony Primetime D'Amato, who is just a riot to be going on this crazy adventure of life with. I'm a full-time realtor for Stone Properties, and then I run a lot. I just run a lot.
That is amazing. And you run quickly, and you've been running faster than ever before, or so it seems.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride for sure. I don't quite understand how I've kind of gotten this second life in the running space, but I'm really appreciative that I've been able to get this bonus round to test my limits and to see, what my max potential could be.
For sure. So to set the stage, you ran in the trials, and then a few months later, you ran your fastest 5K ever. Is that true?
Yeah, by about officially, like race wise, it was over a minute faster than my previous PR.
And it was a pretty stout PR, and you did it solo, right?
I did have my buddy Silas France pace me through it. So it was just the two of us on the track in the summer, very hot. We got started, I think we started our warm up around 6. So we were running, I guess, around 7. But yeah, it was an early, hot summer morning with Silas and Keira on the track. Yeah, and I just called myself in third person. That's cool, I guess.
So have you sort of done the internal digging or introspection on like why do you think this year has been such a strong year for you?
Yeah, I run a lot, so I have a lot of solo time to like sort through this. And I think I can't really, like, we can walk through some things and maybe I can get your advice and you can tell me which of this stuff actually matters and which of it doesn't. But like, I feel like right now I have the luxury, I just turned 36, so I'm a perfect square number, which I'm really excited about being a math nerd. But just my perspective and just the way I look at the world and my maturity has changed a lot from being Keira in her young 20s running. So I feel like that's probably the biggest thing, which is turning me into the runner that I am now, is just the way that I look at it and the way I can handle running in my life and the stress and the pressure. And so I just think the biggest thing is just my perspective changed. But I've learned like throughout my life just to be a little bit more patient, to I don't compare myself to others. And I've been having like a whole lot of fun while doing it this time. And this time around, I've been so focused on the process rather than the outcome. And I feel like
Mhm.
Kira competing in her young 20s, I was just all about trying to set a PR. I don't know. It just felt very big picture, which can be very intimidating. And now Kira in her 30s is more about just every day, putting a penny in that jar, right? Just becoming a little bit better every day. And by the end of the year, you've saved up a lot of money and you can, have a really spectacular performance. But yeah, I think a lot has changed. And I think that I'm such, an anomaly to the running world that I competed at, decently high level right out of college. And then I took nearly a decade off. So I feel like I had a lot of time for my body to recover and repair. And so I feel like in my 30s, I'm pretty fresh, which a lot of runners don't have because most people just keep on running and don't take a decade off. But I don't know. Does any of this make sense? What is your perspective on all this? I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So my goal with this podcast is to explore this. Like, this is the core of what I'm interested in, and so this will be like episode 120. So I've had this conversation a couple of times before with elite and professional athletes, and what you're sharing is really what everyone is sharing, and
Yeah.
it's the fun and consistency and lack of like, I must do this now, and focus on the process. And when you bundle that all together, it allows success to happen naturally. Like, I think it was Vanessa Fraser. She's an athlete in her 20s on Bowerman. And I was like, okay, fast forward 10 years. What are you really proud of? And her answer was getting better. It
Mhm.
wasn't making the Olympics.
Mhm.
It wasn't winning a medal. It wasn't PRing, whatever. It was, I don't know. I'm going to be proud of getting better. And like, that's the epitome of what has allowed most of these athletes that I've spoken with to be successful. It's that approach, and it's the exact approach that you outlined. And I think that it's so different than so many amateur runners who are focused on a BQ or a PR or an OTQ, maybe, where the numbers define the outcome and the numbers define the um, how you feel, essentially. And I've shared this story a million times, but I tried for 4 years to run a BQ, and in that time, the BQ standard got 5 minutes faster. So I ended up needing to run sub 3, and so it took me getting to the start line, standing on the start line, and not caring what
Mhm.
the final clock said, whether it was a 2, a 3, a 4, 5. If it was a 1, that would have been life changing. Um, but I really didn't care what was on the outcome. What was on the clock. I stood there and I was like, I'm happy. This is a celebration.
Mhm.
Now let's have a fucking ball and see what's going to happen in the next couple hours.
Yeah.
And I finished with a 2 on the clock, and I was thrilled, but
Mhm.
um, that didn't matter. It was it was the like it was already a success before I crossed the starting line. And I think that's the perspective, and that's the mentality that's so hard to get to. But
Mhm.
when once you get there, literally anything becomes possible. So, um, big way to frame the question: what do you think were the milestones or failures or lessons that have allowed you to get to that place? Because that's what I like. I think that people want to hear. I think people want to know, like, how do I get there?
That's a really great question. And I really appreciate it. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. And I think like I'll just speak specifically, I'll call it like my bonus round or second round of running. This time around, I can definitely point out different races that or just moments that have kind of allowed me to like learn a big lesson and step forward. But I think originally why I got back into running is exactly what you were just talking about. It was for the joy of it. It was something that I could do, something that I could control. And just, I loved just the process and the journey, as cliche as that sounds. So I think from the start of this round, I felt like I was running for the right reasons. I was running because I loved it. I didn't have to be doing it. So when you put something in your life for that reason, I was really protective of it being kind of my fun, like decompressing, something that I control. So I think starting off, I think I went in with a pretty healthy perspective. And I think one of the first moments was I jumped into the Richmond Marathon. I didn't jump in. I signed up and I did it the right way and everything. But I ran that day just trying to break 3 hours. And I say just trying to break. I know that's just a huge accomplishment. I had never broken 3 hours before, and I had been training really hard to do that. That was my goal. And I got in the race, and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to run on feel. Like, I'm not going to worry about the time. I may go out fast and eat it, but I'm just going to like really like dive into what I'm feeling this day. And I just got into like, I just listened to my body and just locked in. And I think having the ability to do that and really be so in tune with your body that you can just lock in and trust yourself. I think that that was something that I took away from that race. And I ended up finishing that race at 2:47, which at the time it was 2 minutes off the Olympic trials qualifying. And like this immediate fire slash confidence slash, I don't know, just gave me the idea like, you're onto something here. Like if you keep doing what you're doing, like you could qualify. And that I think started this whole like turning wheel of coming back into running in a more serious way. So I started just for fun. During that race, I realized, maybe I can make my first Olympic trials, which was really, really exciting and just gave me enough fire to keep with it and just stay with it. And then I think it was a year and a half later at Peachtree 2019 in Atlanta. That was a fantastic race, but I started like a week before. I started having these like just being really anxious, and I don't want to use the term panic attack lightly, but I was like hyperventilating. I just couldn't like calm myself down because I was so intimidated by the field. Like some of the women there were trying to break, I think, the fastest time ever run in the US for the 10K, the women there. And I remember just calling my coach and saying, like, how am I going to compete with that? And he was like, why are you even thinking about that, Keira? That's not your goal. You're not there right now. You're just trying to run your best race. Just treat it as a workout. Like, I'm going to give you a pace to run that day, and that's what you're focused on. If you're running that pace and you're in first place, great. If you're running in that place and in your dead last, that's fine too. Nothing outside of your like personal goals matters and should impact your performance. And that was a huge, like, look, just changing my perspective to so externally focused to purely like, let's make Keira the best I can be. Nothing around me matters. That was a really, really powerful lesson. It took away a lot of the nerves. I feel like it really got my headspace in the right way, focusing on myself and not anything outside of my control. But I think that was one of the really big lessons I learned in this journey back. And then I think just along the way, doing races like the Olympic trials or even my, 5K time trial on the track has just really built in confidence for me. And I think physically I'm ahead of where I am mentally. So going onto a track thinking, okay, I'm going to run low 15s today. Like I knew my workouts suggested that should be a very realistic goal. But in my head, thinking I'm going to take a minute off my PR is a little bit overwhelming. So I think every time you move a step forward, I've been able to say, okay, great job. Now let's take another step forward. So this was a long winding, rambling answered for a not so simple question, but I definitely do think there were points in this comeback that really defined me and helped shape me as a runner.
That's awesome. One thing you said really resonated. Is like, okay, I'll unlock this achievement basically, and then move on and dream bigger is
Mm-hmm.
my paraphrasing of it. I think
Yep.
that I call this leveling up, and like what used to be hard is now your normal, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a reestablishment of like what's normal, right? Like running 245 or running 235 or running under that probably, 5 years ago might have seemed like actually impossible, but now it's in the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for me, running sub 3 a couple years ago felt impossible, and now I'm, dreaming of a 250. Things
Mm-hmm.
like that, where it's just like taking a step forward and being consistent and, like you said, trusting the process, but having fun along the way. That's how you improve. I had this conversation with Peter Bromka, who I joke is the most referenced person on this podcast. And he said that people come to him all the time, like, oh, how do I BQ? How do I break whatever? He's like, and they ask, how do I do it this year? He's like, well, you can't. You need to, give yourself 2 years or 3 years. Or my coach has, the 5-year plan. And I think that everyone loves results, and everyone loves like, I'm going to do this year or now or soon. But if you really want to get better, it has to be that long-term growth oriented approach
Mm-hmm.
versus outcome. Anytime it's growth versus outcome, you're setting yourself up for success, because if you grow and improve, that's a win. You can
Mm-hmm.
fail and improve, and that's still a win.
Yeah. And a question I get a lot, which I always find funny, people will say like something along the lines of, I want to do my first marathon, but I don't really want to train for it. Like, what's your advice? And I'm like, don't do it. like,
Right.
if it's just a goal and you're not ready for the process, and they're like, what, you're telling me don't run? I'm like, yeah, it's just don't do it until you're ready for the process, or, something along those lines. But I think you're absolutely right there.
Yeah, I think the idea of like there's no point in doing something that you don't want to go all in on, right? Like
Hmm.
you don't nobody needs to run a marathon. I think everyone's physically capable of running a marathon, but that doesn't mean that you're mentally capable of doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and in order to enjoy it, you need to train for it. And in order to train for it, you need to want to do it. So, yeah, it's a bizarre. I mean, for so many people, it's like a bucket list thing. I'll do it once and blah, blah,
Right.
blah. Um, and, there's something to be said for that. But, we're, with social media, it's like people feel compelled to do it, and they feel
Hmm.
compelled to like, keeping up with the Joneses and something like that. Um, I've been part of a community called November Project, and that's sort of how I got into running and got into competition and whatnot. And early on, I had a lot of conversations with friends who like felt like they needed to run a marathon because everybody around them
Yeah.
was doing it. And my first marathon was 3:35. And I was so disappointed in the time. I was like, damn, that's so slow compared to everybody around me. And my buddy was like, you're in this like hyper competitive space where everyone's, running sub 3, and there are 230s around and 210s and all that stuff. Like give yourself a break and just
Yeah.
focus on like what you're doing. So um now
Jonathan, do you want to know my first marathon time ever?
let's hear it.
3:49:49.
So you've taken off more than an hour.
Yeah. That
That's
was
amazing.
that was really painful. I got humbled real hard the first time I ever ran a marathon. But yeah, that one was rough. I found it like at mile like 22, I was stopping at any table that had gummy bears and was just like eating them. And then
So
like walking to the next table. It was tough, man.
I ran Boston 2017, and at the time I was in 3 to 310 shape, and I ran 4:01.
You and I need to have like a pity party for this. This is pretty awesome. Our marathon range is pretty
Yeah.
spectacular. This is awesome.
Yeah, I had a buddy who was trying to break four that year, and we started together, and he finished in 4:06, and I saw him 5 minutes later, and I told him that I was like, I just finished, and he's like, oh my god, if I knew you were like a half mile up the road, I would have done anything to beat you, and but it was one of those things that just like humbles you
Yeah,
and teaches you a lesson that we've heard it over and over again, like the marathon doesn't owe you anything.
right.
I went into that marathon thinking that I was owed a BQ because I put in the work. It was 75 degrees and it was hot and I didn't adjust and I did everything wrong in the 3 days leading up to it. And I got my ass kicked and I ran down Beacon Street asking people for tequila shots and they thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And I was like, you think I'm joking? Like
This
this,
is not
I'm
a
in,
joke. This is
yeah,
what I need right
yeah.
now. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
At
so
least
any,
you like did everything right leading up to those 3 days. Like for me, I did nothing right. And I was totally like, my lesson learned was you cannot like fake a marathon. You need to put in the time and prepare. And yeah, so I will never show up to a starting line of a marathon again unprepared because that is the most miserable experience.
yes, absolutely. So let's fast forward away from our sad marathons and fast forward to 2020. And I want to know, like, how are you just continuing to attack this year in the way that you're doing it? And it seems like you're having so much fun with it. What's been your approach to this pandemic ridden season?
You know, I for me, like nothing too much has changed. Like I run primarily by myself. Like occasionally, once a week, I try to meet up with a girlfriend and go for a long run, Sarah. And then whenever I can convince Silas to work out with me, I will. But maybe that's like once or maybe twice a month. But I didn't see him for like a number of months when the start of the pandemic happened. But for me, like my intentions and my goals and my reason for running weren't tied to any races. It, like kind of like we talked about before, it's been tied to this journey of testing my limits and seeing what I can do and what I can reach and how far I can improve. So races or not, that didn't impact my goal or like my purpose. So, it made it a little more inconvenient because there weren't those points in your training where you get to test it and see where you are. So we just, swapped the races out for time trials. So I had some sort of, you know, uh, just way to see the improvement and to feel like I had that small little win. But, um, I also like, and I saw it a little bit as an opportunity because I know a lot of the pro runners were thinking, well, there's no races. I'm just going to take some time off. And like in my head, I'm like, perfect. Take the time off. I'm going to put pedal to the metal here. And then when things get back to normal, hopefully I've made up some ground because I haven't been training as long. And so I don't know. I feel like I just figured out ways to rewrite that script in my head to like motivate me and keep me encouraged. And, um, originally I was supposed to be on the US half marathon team that was going to compete at the world championships in Poland. So I had that little carrot that got me real excited. And then I started planning my own 10-mile race to try to go after the American record. So that felt like a light at the end of the tunnel that even if nothing else would happen, I would have these things to train for. But I also like, I just love the process. I love the daily, the weekly, the monthly grind. So I'm a happier person with it in my life. So I just saw no reason for any of that to change.
That's awesome. One thing that I've been super curious on is something you shared recently about being unsponsored and your comparison to like many of the pros are pulling back and you're pushing on. Talk to me about the I don't want to say decision to remain unsponsored, because it's, you need two to tango there. But talk to me about the like maybe flexibility it affords you, or are you happily unsponsored, or would you like to have a sponsor?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes and no. Like I obviously would welcome and would love to work with a sponsor that wants to work with me. So I'm definitely not trying to play hard to get by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same
Catch me if
time,
you
again,
can.
I know exactly. But it's just never, that wasn't my goal getting back into running. And I definitely see that it could be a result. Like if I continue to run well, I'm sure there's going to be a brand that's going to think I'd be a great partner. But for me, like it's always just been focused on the running and the improvement, and I feel like that will all fall into place. So it's not been like a motivation. It hasn't been a stressor. And I feel like it has, allowed me some flexibility, but then it's also created a little bit of more hurdles for me because, I am working full-time realtor to make sure I can support this running career and everything. But I don't know. I'm open to it. And, I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the things that you had commented on was the relatability aspect, and I've talked at length about my disagreement related to brands in the past around not working with athletes who have families or are about to have families, because from where I sit on the brand side, that's when a human is most relatable, when they're going through these human experiences.
Yeah.
And that's the part that any runner or any human can relate to. And I just find it fascinating that there isn't more of that yet in the pro space, in the pro sponsorship space. But I find it so compelling that, like you look at a guy like Mike Wardian, who is a full-time, and he works full-time. He's got a family, he's got dogs, kids, all this stuff. And he's training at this high level. And Sally McRae, you look at other people like that who do things outside of just running. And those are people who are running really fast, but people love and listen to because they're relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But I also, yeah, I totally 100% agree with you. I at the same time, like I see that it's a little bit newer for brands and for sponsors, and anything a little unconventional and untraditional, or it's going to take a little bit of time to maybe see that worth. But I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing, because everything I've been doing seems to be working. So eventually maybe that will happen for me. But it has been really fun for me to connect to like other moms or other people trying to go for their round two and running, or whatever that goal and dream is for them. It's been just really inspiring to connect with those people, and to I don't know, just to be able to hopefully help and encourage them just go for their goals in the way that I just was like, okay, time to start running again. Let's do this. So
Nice. Yeah, and I find your use of social media to be wildly entertaining with the intense pun game and strong pun game. So if you don't follow Keira on Strava in particular, you should. One of the questions that came in, where do all your dad jokes come from?
Well, I'd like to correct and say they could be mom jokes too. So we'll
That is
just
true.
call them dad and mom jokes, corny mom jokes. Um, they come from so many different walks of my life. Like for a while, we went through like this phase of my family with these popsicles that had jokes like on the stick. And so you'd have to like you read the joke and then you have to eat the rest of the popsicle to find out what the answer is. So it came from there. And then we got like an Alexa in the house. So I would ask Alexa to tell me a joke. And so she supplied quite a few. Some of them are just, kind of some of the stuff my favorite comedians have said, or something is just I think, and I put it on, or now people have been like seeking me out and sending me jokes, which I very much appreciate because, sometimes I run like twice a day, like it can be up to like 10, 11, 12 times a week. So that's a lot of content and jokes I'm putting out there. So I appreciate people that reach out to me and send me their favorite jokes. But yeah, it's a little bit of everywhere. Sometimes it's just stuff my kids say, which just crack me up. But yeah, I'm inspired by everything, Jonathan.
Amazing. The other related question that came in was what is your favorite Chuck Norris joke?
Oh my gosh. Those are so funny. I think my favorite one is that, and because this is like the math nerd in me, is that Chuck Norris has counted to infinity twice.
Nice.
I don't know why that one has always stuck out with me, but oh man, I love a good Chuck Norris joke. Those are so funny.
Definitely. So, when it comes to social media, is your approach planned? Is it strategic, or is it really just sort of off the cuff and doing what you just enjoy and sharing it along the way?
Yeah, at first I was thinking maybe I should make this strategic, and then I just started thinking like I already have so much going on, like I'm not going to focus on that. So when I see something that's funny that I think could make other people laugh, I'll post that. And I try to keep people updated with my journey because I felt so much support from this crazy journey that I've had. So I try to keep people updated. And then, yeah, stuff that makes me funny is usually what ends up going up there. So it's really not very scripted. I probably should be a little bit more intentional, but like Halloween was a lot of really great content for my family because the costumes were these huge, big blow up Pikachu costumes, which just like I wanted to pee in my pants every
It
time
was
that
so funny.
oh my gosh. And then it's these huge blow up Pikachu costumes that like I realized after we first bought one for my son who's 5. Actually, he'll be 6 tomorrow. And then my daughter who's 4 was like, "Wait, now, I don't want to be Elsa anymore. I want to be a Pikachu also." So we had 2 of these costumes and I'm just trying like in my head I'm giggling because I'm like, "When are they going to figure out that one, this is going to be really hard to walk around the neighborhood to get all that candy. 2, how are you even going to be able to pick up the candy once you're in this like big blow up suit? And 3, if you can even pick up the candy, how are you going to get it in your mouth? Like my daughter eats at least half of the candy she makes that night on Halloween. So when they started figuring it out on Halloween night, I was just losing it. Like my daughter like walks out to the first table, sees the candy, and she's like, "Mom, take this off." So she didn't even make it to the first house. But then my son he's like pretty stubborn. He made it like halfway around the neighborhood before he figured out like if he was running full speed, he could gather a lot more candy. So he only
So
made it about
wise.
half the night, but it was, oh my gosh. And they would trip and fall all the time and they were never seriously hurt, which allowed me to fully laugh at them while they were like rolling around on the ground trying to get up. But yeah, so all of that's on my Instagram.
Yeah, so those videos were hilarious. They looked like I don't even know how to describe it, but it was so funny watching them run and then fall and then just like pop back up. And now that you said that they didn't get seriously hurt, I feel much better about how much I laughed at that.
Oh my gosh, I laughed so hard. Yeah. So if anyone needs a laugh, I know there's a lot to be stressed out right now, but go onto my Instagram page and watch the Pikachu thing. I promise it will make you smile.
Absolutely. So switching gears back to running a little bit, I'm going to ask a question that we talked about, but didn't dive further into, at least related to your answer. So that same question that I asked Vanessa Fraser about, fast forward 10 years, what are you really proud of? I'm curious what your answer would be. So fast forward 10 years, what are you really proud of?
It does have to be in the running space.
No.
Because it's my kids and my family. So, like, what I would be most proud of in 10 years is that through seeing, like, my kids seeing their mom go for something, and this is going to make me tear up, I think, but that they find that thing for them. That would make me so proud. It doesn't need to be running. It could be collecting rocks. It could be coloring or knitting or soccer or just piano. I don't care what it is, but I just wish and hope and just pray that my kids find that thing to like throw everything into, that gets them excited for when the alarm goes up, that they get a chance to do that before the sun comes up, or that, they would not go out with their friends because they really wanted to practice this thing. Like that would make me so proud as a mom if my kids found, that passion in their life. So, that's my answer for that question.
Cool. Do they understand what you're doing?
No. I think they're really supportive. Like they will sometimes come to the track when I work out, and they'll go to like the very top of like the stadium and yell things at me. Sometimes it's encouraging, sometimes it's confusing, but yeah, so I think they see that I love to run, and I think they see how much I put into it, because every morning, I'll be in my running clothes or talking about when I'm going to get my run in or whatever. But yeah, I don't think they quite understand it yet. But maybe actually this summer, it was a really, really fun day. I was about to go out for a run, and my daughter was like, "Hey, Mom, can I come with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you can." I mean, and she's 4, but she put on her running shoes, and my son's like, "Hey, I want to come." So my husband went too, and like the 4 of us went out for like a family run, and that was the most fun I've ever had on any one of my runs. I think we made it 2 miles about with a lot of like walking and smelling the flowers and stuff, but total, I think our family was out there for about 2 miles together.
That's so
But
cool.
yeah, for the most part, they have no idea, and I think that keeps me humble and keeps, everything in perspective for me for what's like really important.
Definitely. Do you remember your first run?
I remember, yes, I think the first time I ever really like ran was in elementary school for the mile. So that was, I think, the first time I ever just went out for a run was, for that mile test. And then at soccer, growing up, I used to run a lot. I had a coach that was very keen that if our team was physically fit, then we would be the best soccer team. And we could outrun any soccer team, but we lost a lot of games. Um, we were a lot faster than everyone, but and then I remember getting to Oakton High School, and the first day seeing one of my best friends now, but she was a senior when I was a freshman, Samia Akbar, and she was doing loops around the school. And I just remember thinking she's the most beautiful runner that I've ever seen. And then I tried to do a loop around the school, and it was very, very hard. But yeah, I guess I do kind of remember a lot of random runs, I guess. I don't know if necessarily those were my first, but
At what point did you realize that you were pretty good at it?
I think in elementary school, I knew I was a good runner because I was always trying to beat everybody in the mile run. Like, not even just all the girls, I was trying to beat all the boys too. So I knew, like, from a younger age that I was pretty quick. And then in soccer, like, I'd be in a game and we'd be losing by 3 goals. And I'd be thinking, like, well, I bet if this was a race around all these soccer fields, I'd win though. So I'd just try to rewrite the story in my head. So I think I've always kind of known that have like a natural gift for running. But yeah, and then in high school, I went out and won my first race. I was put into the JV race, which I was a little, well, I'll say very disappointed with because I'd been running with all the varsity girls, and then I won that JV race. So I was moved up to varsity, but yeah, I think early on I knew that I had a gift for running.
Cool. Another question that I like to ask is about balance. So you've got a lot on your plate. You wear a lot of different hats. What does balance mean to you?
Yeah, it means that everything's fitting in your life. And like, I don't think it's always going to be fitting equally, but for me personally, it means that my family is happy. So if my family is happy, I feel like we're living like a balanced life. And I know there's times that, for my heavy volume weeks, my husband's taking up a whole lot of like the chores and stuff around the house and getting up earlier with the kids. And, a lot more falls onto his shoulders. And I think short term, that's fine. But if, we need to make sure that there's a longer term solution that doesn't involve him, carrying all the weight of the family. So I think I don't know. I guess it's just that everything fits. I guess is how I describe balance in a way that's sustainable for the family or for your life.
Yeah, I love that. A couple of similar answers have been Lindsay Krause talked about it as like a triangle, and it's not, as you said, it's not necessarily an equilateral triangle. Sometimes it skews one way or skews another. In an episode with Mary Johnson, we talked about how it's like it can be seasonal, and in this season you're skewing far one way or another, but you can't permanently stay that way. And I think that's the important takeaway.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those.
Thanks again to Janji for sponsoring the podcast. I've enjoyed seeing Janji grow over the years, and their gear has only gotten better as time has gone on. I have a few pairs of both the AFO split and AFO middle shorts and highly recommend them. Their singlets are super cool too. You can take 15% off all month with the code FTLR15. I hope you love them as much as I do. And now back to our conversation. So what does the rest of the year look like for you? We've got, a couple months left, and then we're into 2021, and who knows what that has in store for us. But how are you approaching what we have left of 2020?
Yeah, so I actually have a number of races coming up, which is really exciting, and if- I'm not holding my breath because there's been so much change in, this nation and world. So who knows what's actually going to happen. But right now I'm scheduled to run a 5K in Memphis on November 14th. It's the Sugar Run 5K. They're having, I think this is the 14th annual year that they're hosting it, but this year it's elite only. So they've invited a field of 7 women and 7 men for this road 5K, which should be really fun. And they have a pretty elite field, so I'm really excited to get in there and just compete. I think that at this point, I've kind of proven that I run really great in time trials or by myself, and now just getting the opportunity to, rub elbows. That's a weird saying, isn't it? Rub elbows. I don't even know why I just said that, but just like really get in there and compete and work on racing tactics and, have surges and different things. So I'm really excited for that. And then on Monday, November 23rd, I'm hosting a 10-mile run in Washington, D.C. to break the American record for the road 10 mile for the women's only. Real excited about that. That's kind of been like the light at the end of the tunnel for me through all this COVID, just having something to work towards. And that would be really cool to say I have an American record. I think
Yeah.
I'd put that in my like email signature line, and I'd put that like everywhere on my realtor card. Like, yeah, I think I would
It's
go a
all
little
about
bit overboard.
standing out. You would be do you market yourself as the fastest realtor in your area?
I don't. but this is actually really funny. I've been trying to get the running realtor tagline to stick. And at I finished one race and I'm like over, heeling over, grabbing my knees, just trying to gasp for air. And someone came up to me and was like, "Hey, are you that running realtor?" And I'm like, "Why, yes, I am." So I love that it's kind of stuck.
Can I interest you in a house?
I know. And he actually wanted to buy a house. That was really exciting. But right after I did the 5K, Sarah Vaughn, who is she does the 1500. She lives out in Colorado. She's also a realtor. She reached out to me and said, she'd always considered herself the fastest realtor in the nation, but she said she had to now pass the torch, which was so flattering. And if we race, Sarah would kick my butt because she has so much more speed than I do. So technically, I think she is the fastest. But that was such, I listened to the message probably 10 times before I could, my brain could process what was actually happening. Wait, did she just call me? This is weird. But yeah, but I do think, at least definitely in Virginia, I feel like I'm probably the fastest runner or fastest realtor out there. But
Lauren Daniels, the wife of pro runner Matt Daniels,
yes.
is a realtor in Colorado as well, and she's got a 240 something to her name. So you guys should race.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, we need to have a realtor showdown. That would be awesome. But
nice.
Yeah, so I'm doing that, and then in December, December still we're trying to figure that out, but I'm hoping that I may be able to get onto a track for a 10K race and then the marathon project at the end of December. So I can't believe that I just listed 4 races in this environment that I'll be doing. But yeah, that's the plan for the rest of the year. And then I think everyone will be thrilled for 2020 to be over and to move on to 2021.
Yeah. So the marathon project is fascinating. I've had Ben Rosario on the podcast a couple of times, and so he and his group with Northern Arizona Elite and Josh Cox and a few others are organizing this incredible invite only, elite marathon somewhere in Arizona. So talk to me about the process of getting involved with that. How did that come about?
That my agent Ray Flynn reached out when they were first planning and just, tried to see my interest. And I'm like, yeah, right now this fall has been more of a base training for me, more of the long distance, getting back, working on volume, becoming stronger. Whereas this summer was more about speed and sharpness. So he had mentioned that and I was like, oh yeah, if that's happening, count me in, get me in there. This would be awesome. I can't believe a race would happen. And then it just kept moving forward. So I found out, I think at the same time as everyone else, on Twitter saying, it's happening and here are the confirmed entries, including Keira D'Amato. So woohoo, this is great. But yeah, I really in this, I'm so appreciative that people like Ben and their group are putting together stuff like this because from doing this 10-mile, and I'm not even doing most of the work, but it's a lot of work. So for them to be able to put their head down and say, okay, there's not the opportunities out there. We're going to create one and then create one and open it up to the whole nation, or to the invited athletes is just really cool of them. So I'm very appreciative to be involved, and I'm really thankful that they're putting this together.
Awesome. What do you wish people knew about you? Switching gears a little bit.
That's a really great question. I guess that I just don't take things way too seriously. That I'm a pretty laid back person and I work really hard, but I have a lot of fun, and that I'm a pretty lighthearted person, I guess. I hope that comes off. But who knows? If they don't know that, I wish they knew that. Or that I have really good jokes. I would, hope that they know that. But yeah, if people just think I'm a nice, kind person, I'd be really happy with that.
That's a win. What do you know now about running that you wish you knew, as you said, maybe in your first go at it?
There's a lot. There's a lot that I know now. But I think it's just like, don't take it so seriously. Like, you get to a race and that's the party. That's the fun part. You've already done all the work. So that should be a celebration of your work. But I think just learning how to just really enjoy, kind of like we've been talking about, but just to enjoy the whole process and the ride, I think is something that I've definitely done a lot better of now than I did in my 20s.
Cool. Um, Talk to me about a time where you experienced what objectively might be considered a failure, but you used it as a way to get better.
I think I've failed a lot. And like, I mean, I know this might be a little bit laughable, but at the trials, I had hoped that I would have run faster and finished a little bit higher place wise. But it just, didn't happen that day. So, but you still kind of gotta, you learn your lesson and move on. But then you kind of like, for me, it was a PR and I did do the best I could that day. So you kind of got to be proud and move on. But I feel like that's kind of another part of my secret sauce is I can get over things pretty quickly. So even with that race at the trials, like I knew I was in sub 230 shape that day. So I kind of just rewrote my own story saying like, okay, that didn't play out exactly the way you wanted it to, but you're sub 230. Let's get back to work. And like I kind of in my head, I broke 230 that day or so. Um, but yeah, so I guess I do a lot of like rewriting my story to make it sound, to make it sound good in my head. But I think that is important that, everyone has bad days. Everyone falls short of their goals sometimes and to figure out what you learned and then just to move on and start working towards the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I think it's like the ability to retell a story in a way that is beneficial or helpful for you. Um, I'm friendly with Dana Giordano, who's an athlete here in
Hmm.
Boston on the Adidas team. And I think it was her that was saying like her biggest skill is no, it was Corey McGee on the Alley on the Run podcast talking about her best trait was the ability to get over bad workouts really
Hmm.
quickly,
Yeah.
and just like put it behind you. So was that something that used to be hard for you, and then it got better, or what's the secret there?
Yeah, I think that before I used to define myself and my confidence and my well being and my happiness all relied on how I performed in running. And now it doesn't. So it's much easier to detach and not, let myself be defined by one hard, bad workout or something that didn't go right. And I think it's important to figure out the lessons learned so you don't get there again. But yeah, you got to move on pretty quickly and just and like for me now, like I don't let small things really get to me. Like I feel like I have become like pretty laid back. Like this is a funny story. At When I was telling you earlier about the Peachtree race that I was very nervous to do, I ended up, I did it and I raced fine. I think I raced well. And as I was crossing the finish line, they were separating. The elites went into this special place, and then everyone else went into the main like party field or the corral where you get your finisher T-shirt, and that's just everyone else goes into and they have this huge field that's like set up to hold over 200,000 people for this huge after party. And it's on the 4th of July. So it's just, a lot of USA pride. It's, pretty fun. So, and I'd started, I think it was like a women's only start. So like the men hadn't even finished yet. So the volunteer was like looking at numbers, and the girl that I was talking with, she's like, okay, you're elite, go into the elite only. And she goes, you're not, go through like, the other place. And the girl I was with, it was like, oh, no, 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 she's an elite too. And I'm like, hey, don't worry about it. It's cool. I'll go this way. Like, so I go into like the park and the field, and I'm the first person in the park. and they have like hundreds, like probably over 1,000 volunteers in the park to greet all of these runners, because I think it's like a 40,000 person race. And meanwhile, everyone else that's finishing is going right on into this elite athlete thing. And I'm the first one to come through this park. And so I start walking over, and everyone notices, oh, great, because they've been waiting there for like an hour. And they're like, oh, good, now the runners are starting to come. Well, them seeing that I was the first runner, everyone thought I had won the race. So everyone in this field is cheering for me and like, putting their hands up and going crazy that, finally they can start doing what they're there to do. But that was really cool. And I'm like, man, if I had like kind of been like stuffing, been like, oh no, I should go, go in here, I wouldn't have experienced such a cool thing. So I ran through like all the volunteers, and I was like pumping my arm, and I was like getting everyone to cheer. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced, having everyone think that I won this race. That I don't know, you just kind of like got to go with the flow, and good things will happen, I guess, is my point of that story.
I think that is a great point of the story. Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap. If we want to follow along with your mom jokes and puns and Chuck Norris jokes and toppling toddlers, where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Strava. I think you just search for Keira D'Amato, and everyone usually spells my name wrong, which really doesn't bother me, but it's Keira. And then on Instagram, I'm at Keira D'Amato, so Keira, and then D'Amato. Kind of, I guess that one's kind of spelled like it sounds, but
awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to chat today, and hopefully see you at one of these races soon when they can all happen again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you taking the time to get to know me any better and share my story. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.